Welcome to the Twitter space of Makati House. Our mission is to help Filipinos help other Filipinos. Our topic tonight is commemorating the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, discussing martial law in the 1970s, and reflecting on what the spirit of people power is. We're joined by former actor, reporter of Radio Bandido, Gabe Mercado, martial law baby, Jay Fajardo, author-performer, Joey Ayala, and grandson of former President Fidel V. Ramos, Patrick Ramos Jalasco. A reminder, our space is recorded and being streamed live to Facebook, YouTube, and Clubhouse. Once again, welcome to Makati House.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Hello, am I here? Sir Joey, we sent a request for you to be a speaker. Wait lang ah. And I think we're one person down. We need Patrick. Oh, how about this? It's better. Mas malinaw na ba? Pero baka kasi maingay eh. Hello? Alright. Oh, there's Pat. Okay, sorry, Pat. Okay. Yes, good evening, everyone. Hi, everyone. So now it is 8:02 p.m. in Manila. And good evening. Maayong gabi kanonyong tanan. Naimag nga rabi kada kayo amin. If you're listening in a different corner of the world, good morning or good afternoon. My name is JP and I'll be hosting tonight's event. Welcome again to Makati House. Tonight is our 10th show, and tonight we will take a trip down memory lane in the Philippines. Our guests tonight have a lot to share on the People Power Revolution, and we'd like to give them as much time as possible to speak. If you have any questions or comments, please save them for later as we will be opening the stage for our listeners and viewers. If you would like to backtrack on the tweets we'll be posting, we will be using the hashtag PeoplePower36. Tonight's event we will first talk about martial law in the 1970s to the early 80s. Then we'll let our speakers share what really happened at the People Power Revolution. At the end, we will reflect on what the spirit of people power truly is. So before I introduce you to our guests, here are some highlights of the timeline of martial law and the People Power Revolution. In 1972, former President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law just barely a year after allowing warrantless arrests on suspected quote unquote enemies of the state. You may look up further on Proclamation 1081. The 70s were difficult times globally. There was an oil and energy crisis. However, the Marcos leadership did not place recessionary measures. By the end of the decade, there was a food security issue and prices of goods increased. Continued borrowing allowed the Philippine economy to collapse. That's by the 80s. And then in 1983, Ninoy Aquino was assassinated, and more than 2 million people attended the funeral procession. Finally, in 1986, a snap election was held with Cory Aquino running against Ferdinand Marcos. There were huge discrepancies with the Comelec versus the NAMFREL tally, and Comelec tabulators staged a walkout, and then Cory Aquino rallied for support, leading to the People Power Revolution. So let me we have our guests. Do we have Mr. Joey? Sir Joey, I think you need to tap on the two little people on the app. Also, you need to be on the mobile app pala. Sa browser, sa laptop or desktop, you can't speak. So you need to use the mobile app. Um, Kaz, can you shoot an email to Sir Joey? Assist. So anyway, let me introduce our speakers. We're joined by Gabe Mercado. He was a reporter actor at age 13 at the time. Gabe collated political and military information from a network of volunteers. Father James Reuter commandeered the DZRG station and branded it as Radio Bandido, or Pirate Radio. Today, he's known for the slogan of Yakult's Okay Kabajan, and he's also the founder of Spit Manila and a new resident of Baguio City. Hi, Gabe. And
Hi, hi,
yeah,
hi, JP. Thank you for having me.
yeah, thanks for lending your time tonight. Appreciate it. And then next, we also have Jay Fajardo. He is a martial law baby. He was 17 when the People Power Revolution happened. He was also a volunteer at NAMFREL during the 1986 snap elections. And finally, the number one reason we invited him to speak at the event, he was also at the revolution for all 4 days. So now he is CEO of and founder of two Filipino tech companies. So I think in Namfel he was doing computer related stuff and couldn't let go of keyboard since the revolution. And we have Mr. Joey Ayala. Joey Ayala was at Davao during the times of martial law and the People Power Revolution. As a young and budding artist at the time, he was exposed to violent protests in Davao. He was 2000 in he was 2008 to 2010 chair of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and short for NCCA, and is now known as a Filipino musician, environmentalist, and author. So we're just helping Sir Joey to get up on the stage so he can speak. Um, so with Sir Joey, at least we have a view from outside Metro Manila uh, before, during, and after the uh, People Power Revolution and martial law. And finally, and last but not the least, we have Patrick. Is Patrick a speaker now? Oh, okay. I think I don't see him. Oh, okay. Patrick Ramos Jalasco is a grandson of former President Fidel V. Ramos. FVR, or short for FVR, was a key figure in martial law and the People Power Revolution. In the revolution, soldiers defected to the side of FVR, and defense minister at that time, Juan Ponce Enrile. Currently, Patrick is a practicing urban planner, but at the same time, he's also a vocal observer of Philippine politics. So, uh, since uh, former President Ramos is has a has a health issue right now, at least we have Patrick who can give us some personal perspective of former President Ramos. So yeah, before we begin to we start the martial law segment. Um, Jay and Pat, can we hear you? Okay, can you say hi to the audience?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, JP. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Good, good. Yeah. Good evening. So si Sir Joey Ayala na lang. Okay. So in so just to let you know with this topic, I was born after after the People Power Revolution, and since my last name is Law, sabi ng ninang ko, um, yung pangalan ko na lang daw should be Marshall. So para martial law. Um, and because of that, I didn't have first-hand experience of martial law or the People Power Revolution. And I guess I'm the next generation that was supposed to carry the torch or keep the spirit of people power alive. But I might not have done enough. And and also the reason that we're doing this Twitter space tonight is that uh, when I was young, I was also uh, not a very good student when it came to history. So, but now, having grown up and uh, having grown up and matured enough, and now I have an interest in politics. Um, not that much, but this is an opportunity to retell those stories and keep the spirit of people power alive. Uh, so for martial law, I would like to ask our speakers, how was life like during martial law? What were the signs of corruption that caught your attention? Let's go with Gabe first.
Thank you, JP. I was very, very young during martial law. So 86, I was 13. So I do not have a super clear memory of because I was born in 1972. So talagang literal na martial law baby. Um, and the feeling at that time was really and I grew up comfortably. Corporate yung tatay ko. My mom was a writer and an editor. So we were comfortable, middle class. And the feeling that we really got at that time was Marcos was everything. Marcos had the power of life and death over you. Parang nagpro-project sila as royalty and that you could at that lahat ng ginagawa nila tama. Ganun ang pagka-shelter ng pagka-bring up sa amin as a middle class family at that time. You do not question them. You take their authority without question. At sila daw ang provider ng everything true, good, and beautiful about society. We were the middle class, was sheltered like our family from the struggles of the working class, the struggles of the common people. Although nagtitrickle sa amin, naririnig namin yung mga phrases like peso devaluation, phrases like insurgency and the NPA. Naririnig namin, nakikita namin yung unrest na yon. Pero at the most part, we were protected from it kasi at that time also, mas walang internet, konti lang ang television and radio stations, and they were all controlled by the government.
Right. Thank you, Gabe, for sharing this. Um, even when I was young, at that time, former President Ramos was already the president, and I guess at the time the the economic decline was still ongoing, no? Because the Philippines was still paying its more debts at that time, and I can also feel that because that time was a Philippine energy crisis, lots of brownouts. So I grew up hearing the sound of a generator, um, lots of brownouts, and and also my parents complaining of, for example, fuel prices continuously going up. Let's turn to Jay. Jay, how was your experience as a martial law baby? So you were born after the proclamation, right?
No, I was actually born before the proclamation. I was born in 1968. So I'm a bit older than Gabe. Hey, Gabe. Gabe and I know each other, but not from those days. So, um, so I was born in 1968, and my exposure, I was a little bit older nung nag-declare ng martial law. And one of the earliest memories that I have of it were in school. I remember they had to gather all of us up and attend parang mga rallies, youth rallies. And we were like what? Grade 2, grade 1, grade 2. We were wearing t-shirts with Philippine flags, and it was really rally for the so-called New Society. So yun yung those were things that I remember very early. Um, Another image, and you have to remember in 1972, I was like 4 years old. Uh, four and mga 4 years old ako noon, 4, 5. So yung mga naalala ko noon, I used to remember curfew passes because we had a curfew. And if I remember correctly, you can't be out of the house after. Correct me if I'm wrong, ah. Di ko maalala kung yung curfew is around 12 midnight. But if you get caught after that, then you get detained. So may mga curfew passes dun sa bahay. My mother had them. Like Gabe kasi I was ano, my life was also middle class, bubble sheltered, and we weren't really exposed to the prevailing oppressive issues that was going on. Um, but going back to some imagery, I remember passing through EDSA, and I used to see people with bolos cutting cogon grass outside of Aguinaldo, so along EDSA, on the side of the road. And I remember asking someone, I think it's my dad and my mom, sabi ko, ano, what are they doing? Mga nahuli yun ng curfew. So they were detained. They were asked to cut the Kogon grass outside of the camp. So those are no imagery, early imagery that I experienced that I remember. There's probably more. I'm pretty sure there's more, no, and they might come back later as we have this discussion. Pero just like Gabe nga, we were oblivious to what was really going on for the most part, from 1972 all the way to 1983. Yeah. So we were very comfortable. My parents were also in the corporate world. Um, in fact, the earliest I remember of the opposition was Laban, sina Ninoy, no? The Laban Party. And I remember dining room discussions. My sisters were a little bit older, and they were starting to talk about all sorts of dissident ideas. Siyempre, teenager sila at that time. Mga yan, mga late 70s. And I remember my parents or my mom sort of like taking the line na, guys, don't rock the boat. Um, 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 Kasi kami, we're comfortable. We didn't have any, we were living our lives, middle class. So, ang linya ng magulang ko at that time was, don't rock the boat. Don't be the, um, don't be dissident. Don't take that subversive line, etc. That was then. So, yun yung mga naalala ko noon, ng mga early days. Um, Tapos, that all changed in 1983 nga when Ninoy was assassinated, was killed. Kasi, ah, ano yun, pivotal yun. It's so stark. I remember the memory of my dad watching it on TV, the ticker tape, news ticker going across the screen na pinatay si Ninoy sa Manila International Airport. And my dad going like, this is bad. And parang yung ominous talaga yung declaration yun na this is bad, meaning this is going to change a lot of things. And true enough, it did. So, I guess I'll stop there kasi yun na yung yun yung panahon na marami nagmulat and that was a catalyst. So, yeah, back to you, JP.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Um, yeah, yeah, share ko lang muna before I go to Patrick. Uh, so, in preparation of this, uh, for this event, ang dami kong ni-research actually And uh, from, you can say, people power ignorance or ano lang, Keb's level na people power information or about the martial law. Uh, uh, I learned a lot. And actually, I feel like I haven't learned enough. Ang dami kasing information. Fortunately, ngayon, ang dami pa rin na document na information. For example, the proclamation, you can find it now on the official gazette of Malacanang, and even the notes before yung activity na ni uh, uh, ni Ferdinand Marcos at the time, uh, for that week, was also there. So I wanted to go through all those, and ang dami ko din na information on the atrocities, the abuses, and uh, thankfully, aside from the information from the official gazette, I also uh, I'm grateful to the New York Times for digitizing their archive because it's searchable. So I was able to find articles from the 1970s, yung the criticisms of the Marcos leadership at the time, because I really wanted to have a fair view of this, or a fair assessment to the best that I can. Actually, we even sent, I wrote an inquiry to the camp of Marcos Jr. I requested I formally requested for a comment on the subject, but I did not receive a reply. Um, I'm not sure if they will, but at least I tried. But um, ayun, and even yung there is one other report, for example, by Amnesty International, uh, closer to, I think it was in the late 70s na. So they had madami kasing reports of human rights violations to Amnesty International. So what Amnesty International did was they sent a delegation to the Philippines to investigate, and then they published the report. And then this report, Amnesty International, the Philippines branch, they scanned the entire report, and now it's online. So if anyone's interested, I'm thinking of doing digitizing that report as well. So it's so it's searchable. So it's 125 pages. I didn't read all. I didn't have the time, but it's quite detailed, and then nandun din yung reports ng human rights violations. Um, and uh, mukha namang legit. Kasi during that time, typewriter pala, wala pang Microsoft Word or WordStar or Google Docs. Uh, and then we also found some pictures. We asked for permission from some photographers who were at the People Power Revolution, and we got permission to share it to everyone. Although public naman siya, but um, it's good to share them here for everyone to see. Kasi baka sabihin baka magsabi fake news or Instagram filter. So hindi siya Instagram filter, guys. So let's go to Patrick. I want to ask Patrick first if he was born before, or I think Patrick is relatively the same age as me. So I want to know if Patrick was born before or after People Power.
Yeah. Actually, wala akong share kasi I'm a 90s baby. So, I was born in 1991. So, hindi ko naman na-experience yung martial law and that period. Um, excuse me. But siguro, one thing I could remember for now, at least from my childhood, in terms of, siguro in relation din with people power and martial law, was yung, anong tawag, yung Voltes 5. Kasi, naalala ko when I was a kid, going back home from school, pag afternoon, yun, diba, I think, GMA yata yun eh. GMA 7, magpapakita sila ng mga cartoons. And for some reason, naging sobrang patok yung Voltes 5 when there was a big announcement. And at that time, syempre, bata pa ako nun eh. I couldn't understand what the hype was. And I think it was my mom or my tita na inexplain nga nila. And I think it was also shown in the news eh, na yung kaya siya naging sobrang patok ulit. It was because at that time, na yung parang pinakita yung Voltes 5 first sa Pilipinas during the 1970s. But then, sila Marcos had to stop it kasi it was, they thought at that time na yung it could contribute to yun nga dissidents going against government kasi parang ganun yung story niya, 'di ba? So I think one of my titas yung was also at that time, I think during the 1970s, was a fan of the show. Tapos yun nga parang pinutol nila abruptly eh. And they just brought it back siguro mga, I think like early 2000s or late 90s eh. Kaya even yung nung binalik nila yun, hindi lang siya naging patok excuse me, sa mga bata, but I think yung mga at that time siguro mga age 40 eh, 40-year-old people na yun, para nakita na nila yung ending siguro ng Voltes 5. And siguro I'm sharing that story mainly because I can imagine parang these are one of the things na we think is yung we at least my generation takes for granted na we can see these kinds of shows or yun nga, being able to access the internet, being able to access social media, being able to read newspapers. But at that time, di ba parang ano eh, like, lahat talaga hawak ng Marcos admin eh, na there was really a parang media blackout just so they could um, air their propaganda of how quote unquote good and beautiful life was back then, when now that we know na it wasn't actually yeah.
Yun. Thanks, Matt. Uh, uh, at least mas marami na siya. Ako, I was so oblivious to it. Maybe because during the rest of maybe half of martial law, maybe my parents were also, they were scholars abroad. Um, so they weren't that exposed. Uh, but that's okay. Nandiyan naman yung information. Like I said, I'm fortunate that it's all searchable now. And I want to go to we have three more questions on this topic. Has to be taking too slow. So first, next question. No, what made Marcos Senior a dictator? Kasi ang dami sabi diktador, di ba? And then maybe for Pat and the other speakers so that they can kasi uh, Pat wasn't born yet at that time. Maybe you can expound on what was FBR's for former President Ramos's role during martial law, and what was your impression of him? Or we can go back on that later, no? But maybe you can give the facts, Pat, later, or what you gathered from him. So let's go. Let's start with Gabe again para alphabetical order.
Salamat. Hello Jay, hello Pat. I think yung experience ko was based on experiences of family members, neighbors, friends who were older. Meron akong isang relative na who was done with college na, just fresh graduate of or graduating sa college at that time na biglang kinailangan um, i ipadala abroad ng family because his life was in danger kasi student activist. Ngayon kasi marami tayong parang marami tayong nakikita in social media, whatever, na mga advocates, activists, and they're vocal and they can say what's on their mind. Back at that time, it was a risky thing to do. Pwede kang damputin at mawawala ka na lang. One relative of mine was one of those that had to be flown out of the country because his life was explicitly in danger dahil aktivista siya. And I only learned this story, believe it or not, 5 years ago when I visited the country where he was, and he told me the entire story kung bakit nangyari yon. And the time na nangyari yon, mga 7 years old pa lang ako. And that's just one of the stories kung ano yung style ng governance niya at ano yung ginawa niya para maging dictator. Arbitrary disappearance of people who he did not disagree with. So that's one thing that made him a dictator. I'm done speaking. And it seems, I think, that I am the only speaker left. Am
Oh,
I
sorry.
correct?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Mute ko pala yung sarili ko. Yeah, I was saying, uh, it's right. Yung mga disappearances, it's also in the Amnesty International report. They listed all the atrocities that the human rights abuses, especially yung mga nawala or disappearances. They were so shocked with what happened. It's in the report. They said they were so disturbed with the number of abuses, and then the the courts or the government uh, was ignoring it. Nagbubulag-bulagan. And kung may mahuli man or may na-report, hindi na investigahan or hindi nakukulong. So that's in the Amnesty International report that I wanted to digitize. So, Jay, how about you? I want to hear from you. What made you think Marcos was a dictator?
Um, he, okay, just, siguro like Gabe, late na namin na discover eh. There are a lot of things that we discovered later na. I was already in high school, 80s na, pagkatapos ng, pagka, right after Nina was assassinated, because there was a lot of bootleg information, there was a lot of underground info that was starting to surface. So, dun pa lang namin nalalaman yung kung ano yung mga detalye and which stunned us, no? But going back, I guess, to the earlier years, what kind of what kind of what's his evidence or manifestations of dictatorship that we could experience. I think one of the biggest ones was the prevailing fear of the Metrocom, what used to be called the Metrocom, yun yung PC. Uh, they were being used as ano, rather than being seen as public servants or those that you look to for help, they were actually feared. They had this sort of like reputation of being Gestapo, secret police, mga ganyan, ano? Ganyan yung tawag dito, how people saw them. And the funny thing was, it was accepted, especially in the middle class. Yun na yun eh. It is what it is. It was what it was. Tapos, marami mga organizations no, that existed, mga paramilitary, mga YADO. That was a youth group. That was a paramilitary group na which is supposed to be youth, no? Um, that was those are things that we knew about the military, the police, etc. And that was one of the stark manifestations of dictator behavior. Um, Tapos yung mga news that started to come out in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. The news, actually two types of information started to surface. One was on the oppressive side, yan yung mga human rights violations. And on the other side, yung opulence of the family, um, how they were living their opulent lifestyle. They wanted to paint themselves as royalty. So when you have those two that they coexist, two very contrasting images. One, an image of poverty in the countryside, oppression of the farmers, etc., the insurgency. Tapos on the other side, nandiyan yung kala mo, yung royalty, daming pera. They behaved as if they had so much money when in a democracy, public servants and leaders aren't supposed to be that rich, no? So that sort of like painted the gave us evidence of it being a dictatorship. And of course, the very obvious one, no? The term extension. Um, um, Declaration of martial law was just the start, and we were very young. Um, we couldn't really understand, but end of the day, it was really trying to stay in power as long as they could. That was an obvious evidence of dictatorship behavior. Yeah.
To build on something that Jay said, the way news was distributed at that time, nabanggit ng konti ni Jay, the press kasi was really controlled by Marcos and was really subservient to the point of being gushing and always adoring the Marcos family. If you got news about the unrest in the countryside or yung opulence nga ni Marcos, there were only very few ways you could get it. After Ninoy's death in 1983, ang naging popular source of news was this fashion magazine, women's magazine called Mr. and Miss, which pivoted from being a fashion and women's magazine to become a news telling magazine talking about all the different issues. Tapos pangalawa rin after Ninoy's assassination, we would get news through Betamax copies. These are the ancestors of the VHS tape and the DVD disc. They would be Betamax tapes of Japanese and American news covering Ninoy's assassination, because the local press was ordered to cover it very limited, in a very, very limited way. So, parang hallmarks yon ng dictatorship. Na talagang kinokontrol mo kung anong lumalabas. Sinishape mo yung narrative. There was no free press at that time. I'm done.
JP, baka nakamute ka ulit.
Oh, sorry. I keep doing that. uh, yeah, yung thanks, Gabe. I wanted to add yung sa fashion magazine that you mentioned. Was a nearly similar story from what I found from searching news articles from that period. May one uh, is parang gossip or chismis na column siya eh. Yung sabi na meron daw survey yung Manila Bulletin kung sino daw mas maganda or mas mas pata yung skin or fairer yung skin. And it was Ninoy versus Imelda. And Imelda lost. And ang sabi dun sa column, rumor has it that Imelda ordered the printers to be stopped. Uh, and yun yung napulot daw sa grapevine in Manila that's picked up by the New York Times. So, even nun, chismis na nga lang yung makukuha mo. Um, yeah, so Pat, thanks for helping me out. What did you say about the FBR or your grandfather? What do you think his role was at that time? No? Like Jay mentioned, yung Gabe and Jay mentioned yung Metrocom. I think your grandfather is the chief of the constabulary. What are your thoughts on that? Or has your grandfather shared anything about that?
Hello. Well, I don't think there's any other way. There's no sugarcoating this. And yun nga, nandoon talaga sa records na si former President Ramos was the chief of the Philippine Constabulary during that period. And as what Jay and Gabe mentioned, na one of the hallmarks of dictatorship is using state force to basically curtail any opposition, silence any criticism against the current admin. And yun, at that time, the Philippine Constabulary was, I guess, kind of yung that force that did all that. And unfortunately, yun, Lolo was ahead of it. And I'm sure, excuse me, I'm not gonna parang, how do I say this? Or parang, I mean, that's the truth. But I think one thing I'd like to share also from my, at least from my perspective, from as a family, was that you see Lolo kasi, former President Ramos, ever since like he was trained as a soldier. And I don't know if you, parang yung career niya, he's a career soldier. If you look him up sa internet nga, parang he's the only president who's actually been able to climb every single rank ng within the military. So, I'm bringing that up mainly because, 'di ba parang ang training sa military is that yung and then follow now, ask questions later. And what I've seen so far and how I witnessed si Lolo, ganun talaga eh. Um, and I think from the stories that I got from his wife, si Lola Ming, na he was trying to professionalize, and he was trying to at least be as professional as possible. But yun nga lang din na ang hirap. Para it's I think he had that, it was that moment na it was hard to be yung trying to balance being professional but at the same time doing good. And I think this was also something that I shared before nung previous siguro pre-production talks natin, na there's also this dynamic na si former President Ramos and and Ferdinand Marcos are second cousins. But I think and they're both Ilocano eh. So, and this is something that I just realized siguro a few years ago eh, na there's a Ilocano culture na blood is thicker than water. And I think Lolo saw Ferdinand Marcos as a parang elder kuya eh. And they also shared parang I from what I can remember, they experienced World War II together. Yung like those sketchy guerrilla records ni Marcos. Alam ko Lolo was also there, and 'di ba parang there's a different bond that you establish eh when you share parang a life or death situation with someone. And I think that, and at that time Lolo was a teenager. So I think that was kind of his anyway, parang growing up, crucial growing up experience, which kind of made it difficult, I think, for him to kind of do his decisions or where to position himself during the martial law period. Yeah.
Yan. Thank you, Pat. I'm gonna skip some of the two other questions kasi we already discussed the disappearances and the dictatorship. Um, na okay, so I'll just weigh a bit more on another, way more on the dictatorship again. Uh, so in my research, I found out that Mark Mark also wrote a couple of books, and para siyang I think he was trying to emulate Mao. So he was trying to emulate Chinese communism. So meron yung bagong lipunan. So ang daming projects na bagong lipunan. Yun yung theme niya ng, I think in the late 60s to the end the 70s na he started this several books na lahat bagong lipunan or new citizen. And we were discussing this in Makati House, Clubhouse. We were talking about communism. Sabi ko, yung may bagong lipunan. And nabot ako pa yan. There were, I mean, not in the 60s or 70s, pero yung bills, yung, yung pera na bagong lipunan design, nabutan ko yun, the oddly shaped coins, and the highest denomination bill at yung 100 peso note. Those were products that bagong lipunan, which meant a bit more. No? So if you want to follow more uh, on ideologies, you try you to start to see the similarities on what he was trying to do with communism and dictatorship, and parang he wanted also uh, to maybe to reform the Filipino culture, um, but uh, I'm also a bit conflicted with how you want to do that. I also want the Filipino culture to improve, to grow further, but I don't want to. But I'm a believer of free thinking and free will. No? You let culture evolve by itself. You don't go force its way. Um, and the next thing I wanted to highlight on sa martial law was the economic decline. So at that time, I was also researching during that period. Ano yung mga external factors that would have uh, affected the Philippines. So at that time, so the Philippines just came from World War II, nga, di ba? And we recently uh, just gained independence from the United States. So but we were also very dependent with the United States. So during the 70s, there was an oil and energy crisis, and we did fairly well at the start because we were exporting a lot uh, of raw goods like sugar, palm oil. Um, but to develop the Philippines, the government kept on taking out loans. And then yun nga yung problem na ano, di ba, yung nabubulsa na. Dun na lumalabas yung accusations of na binubulsa yung inutang because of all the shoes that are being bought, the extravagant parties, and yung there was an abuse of power. And when martial law was declared, no, yung one of the first um, parang orders or in general orders of Marcos was he was gonna be the uh, is it here in one of the he proclaimed that the president shall govern the nation and direct the operation of the entire government. So um, by saying that, in my opinion, parang you're claiming everything that the government is doing kahit hindi ikaw yung ano, because ikaw na nag-utos nun eh, di ba? So ikaw na nag-utos na magpadampot, magpapatay ng ganyan, ganyan. So there is no excuse to say you didn't know. You could have known because you were in direct control of every aspect of the government. You were taking um, businesses and giving them to your friends. And going back, may I skip the part I wanted to say in the global economy. So um, there was an oil and energy crisis. So that was the 70s was also a weird time. No? It was a troubled time. It was the Cold War. So there's a big fight between the ideologies. Even right now, it's still going on. You can see Ukraine and the U.S. still trying to fight with that. So there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then so how that oil crisis stemmed was um, the Arab nations who were producing the oil, the OPEC, they decided an embargo to have to embargo the West because the West was favoring Israel. Eh, kalaban nila yun eh. So and then so we were caught in the crossfire. The Philippines was caught in the crossfire, and the rest of the world because the oil prices went up. And so naging global recession. And the Marcos government at that time did not implement nga yung recessionary measures. Utang pa rin ng utang without thinking how to repay this in the future. And then there was also um, food crisis. Uh, at, it came to a point na uh, we so there was a drought, or no, there was a flood in the late 70s, and then the next year there was a drought. So there was 2 years where we had underproduction of rice, and it came to a point na um, we had to start rationing rice, and with martial law in place. So syempre yung those who are in power can abuse that, because rice became a a uh, a form of currency, or used as a tool to influence someone. Um, and so yung iba, you have to line up to get rice. Imagine that. So hindi dito parang mang-inasal na only rice. Um, and finally, dun sa um, then what made it worse, no? Because we also were short on oil. We Dahil we have a shortage of rice, we even managed to export rice. We Marcos arranged a trade deal with Indonesia to trade rice for oil. So it didn't make sense to me. Parang it, if somebody can fact check me if that's incorrect. So yun, tuloy-tuloy lang. It was a bunch of horrible decisions. And I understand, no, like what Jay and Gabe said. Things were going downhill, down and down. The slope is just getting deeper and deeper. Na it was it was like suicide. So yeah, that's it. Uh, I think we can move on to people power itself, because we're starting to run out of time. But I want to give G and Gabe to add final thoughts on martial law before we move on to people power. Jay, would you like to go first?
Sige. Uh, since you started out already with the economic backdrop, just to make things clear, the whole oil crisis was the context was a global context. So everyone was at the mercy of that. Unfortunately, in the face of that oil crisis and the global economic crisis, the dictatorship was not only not putting in mitigating solutions, but they were actually making things worse because clear one of the well documented um, instances or activities that the government did or Marcos did during martial law was they grabbed businesses from businessmen and gave them to their friends. Um, so whether or not these friends were capable businessmen or were competent to run these businesses was besides the point. All they did was milk them for cash. So if you multiply that by an order of maybe tens to hundreds of businesses, imagine the impact on our economy. It wasn't just the prevailing economic forces that was happening, but they were actually active people, people actively and consciously running businesses to the ground and using them as their own cash cows. So that compounded the problem. Um, so yun. So that's actually the what made our economy really bad, no? Plus natural disaster, etc., the drought in Negros, the mismanagement of the sugar industry, that all happened. And that's all a chain reaction and domino effect that pretty much made us the sick man of Asia. The funny thing is one of the key, um, I don't know, maalala pa ni na Gabe to, no? But a lot of guys in my generation. For years, we had yung mga model ng kotse natin dito sa Pilipinas. Nalagpasan tayo ng mga models, yung development ng models ng Mitsubishi, yung Lancer, box type Lancer. For years, we had the box type Lancer, Sir Lancer, and the rest of the world had the newer ones, no? Wala, because our economy
Tayo,
was really a
tayo
bad
macho
macho
machine pa rin
machine.
tayo.
Oo. So, ano talaga, it was I guess we were like a really bad economy na napag-iwanan ng mundo after a while, especially in the 80s. Um, and yeah, it was and nung nag-end yung dictatorship, saka naglabasan na kung anong what kind of economic damage was happening, no? Um, including the loans that we took out. Um, and I still remember that figure, 32 billion is the figure back then when post EDSA. Ngayon mas malaki na binabayaran pa rin natin.
Correct. And inulit pa. But anyway, we will. That's outside martial law. Gabe, last words for martial law.
I think also it has to be mentioned the way the dictatorship was also controlling organizing at that time. You could not gather, and I forgot the exact number, but you could not gather in groups of more than, let's say it was 10. It was a specific number. So hindi yun. So um it became illegal kasi um you're organizing against government, ganon. It was only towards the later years that they were um allowing it again. And that affected um, a lot of the groups, religious groups among them, um, and their ability to organize was controlled. And that's why medyo nagka-awakening talaga after Ninoy's death, and people were starting to organize, doing rallies again, something that was seen as almost unthinkable and illegal. That was what built up to people power, the ability to organize and see others advocating the same thing. Medyo nandun na yung start nun. So that will set us up for the People Power Revolution.
Thanks, Gabe. Okay, so we'll move on to we'll get back to Pat, and hopefully we can get Joey Ayala on board. May mga shinare din siya with us about with what was happening in Davao at the time, the height of martial law, and the time right before the People Power Revolution. Uh, but I want it to come directly from him. So let's see if we can we'll go on a quick break just so our guests, our speakers can have some time to compose themselves. So stay tuned. We'll just take a 1 minute break, and we'll 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 next we'll discuss what happened in the People Power Revolution. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Uh, we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Twitter space of Makati House. Our mission is to help Filipinos help other Filipinos. Our topic tonight is commemorating the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, discussing martial law in the 1970s, and reflecting on what the spirit of people power is. We're joined by former actor, reporter of Radio Bandido, Gabe Mercado, martial law baby, Jay Fajardo, author-performer, Joey Ayala, and grandson of former President Fidel V. Ramos, Patrick Ramos Jalasco. A reminder, our space is recorded and being streamed live to Facebook, YouTube, and Clubhouse. Once again, welcome to Makati House.
And we're back. So, uh, our voiceovers were done by Jalasco. She's one of the listeners here, so shout out lang kay Teacher Beth. Uh, and I'd like just to announce that we'll be giving away a Steam key of Tropico 6. So it's a game where you role play as a dictator and you can run your own city. So pwede pa rin maging dictator safely, and you can, torture and give your citizens a difficult time inside the video game. And we're also giving away another Steam key for of Civilization 6. So yun naman, this is from a global perspective, and that's where you can see yung mga sinasabi ko na difference in ideologies and why happiness is important, because you have to keep your constituents happy, and how liberties help with, having a better a spread of your culture. Kasi dominance din yun. That's why you can see na a lot of big Chinese companies are also trying to penetrate Hollywood. They're paying for productions of films of in Hollywood para lang they can also in a way dictate what can be said or can be said. Anyway, so we'll go to people power, and let's go with Pat first, because as we all know, FBR and Enrile were, from what I understand, what Jay was telling, so Ramos and Enrile um, defected. They wanted to start a coup, and then the people were, um, and may sinasabi si Jude natin like Black Swan. But anyway, uh, they were trying to protect Ramos and Enrile at People Power. So I want to hear from Pat, he has gathered that and stories from his lolo about that, about defecting from uh, the Marcos leadership.
Hello. Actually, uh, excuse me. Parang what I mentioned yung sa previous meetings natin, the stories, or para lolo kasi is a military person, and yung he's not the type of person to overtly show his emotions or share these kinds of stories. Um, but yung what I mentioned earlier and I guess like just to stress the point na first and foremost, Lolo was a career soldier. And I think yung at least like how I growing up, how I've seen him, parang I've never met someone who's so in love with the Philippines other than yun, former President Ramos na siguro halos 24/7. Yun lang yung para how when you talk to people and yung when they speak about something that they're so interested in, their eyes just light up. Yun. Na every time he talks about the Philippines, I can see the glimmer in his eyes. And I think yun nga na ultimately every decision that he made was for the Philippines. And siguro with that yun sa EDSA People Power and having to be in the military, I think probably one of his most difficult periods in his life kasi what I mentioned earlier, on the one hand na he was trying to be a professional soldier na yun nga, na protecting the Filipinos, having the best interest of the Filipinos, but at the same time yung having to answer or follow yung his boss at the time, si Marcos. But I think ultimately nga na his love for the country prevailed. But again, I don't think it was a very easy decision to make. Kasi, if I may share, na again, going back to the familial factor of Ilocanos, na alam ko na Lolo's mom, Angela Valdez Marcos. Angela, sorry. Yeah. Marcos Valdez. You si Ferdinand Marcos was her favorite nephew. And there's also that factor eh. And parang I think Lolo saw Marcos as this elderly kuya, like I mentioned earlier. So it really took some time to ano yun, parang to go against this kuya figure. But again, what I mentioned earlier, na para, kasi people might say na, oh, Ramos just jumped ship when it was pretty convenient for him. Kasi at that time, di ba, yung sabi nila na may sakit na si Marcos nun eh, na he had lupus. And his grip in power was loosening. But I think na parang he was also, knowing Lolo, he was also parang a calculating person. He was waiting for the right time. And I think he was really genuine in terms of serving the country. Kasi I guess like one evidence of that is the UP-DND Accord in 1989 na, di ba, parang who would have thought na this is like the former PC chief signing something like that. Lalo na he was, I guess, like a key person in martial law. And I actually saw a post like a few days ago. I think it was former DSWD Secretary Judy Tagilao, sharing na during Lola Leticia Ramos Shahani's wake. They were there, and former secretary in the post, former secretary said nga na she was talking to Lolo and saying na, oh, I was also a victim of martial law. And in that post, yun, Lolo said na he apologized for what happened. And like it's, 'di ba, parang it's rare to see those kinds of things, to hear those kinds of stories na if he wasn't genuine. And for me, and yun nga, parang from my perspective, I think ultimately he always had the best interest of the Filipino people. And I think that's what led him really to jump ship and do EDSA.
Right. Right. No, no, I remember what you said na especially nga sa pag soldiers may real practice na you really have to be obedient kasi yung training eh. And I guess after, like you said, he's a decorated soldier. Um, ma, that's many years of training that he had to go against. Um, let's go with Gabe. Since Gabe was with the Gabe, can you retell your Radio Bandito story? There is an article that I read, but that's all the information. And I only first learned about this because Jay mentioned it's how the two of you are connected in this story. Uh, you Gabe heavily influenced Jay or convinced Jay na to go to the streets to EDSA to help um, uh, secure the barricade. So, Gabe, please do tell.
Thank you, JP. Before I start, I'm really, really missing Manong Joey because so far this has been a very Manila-centric story, and I'm sure Manong Joey would have his input here would have been really, really interesting because Davao was really called a laboratory during that time on how the insurgency underground movement was happening. So it would have given us a very, very good insight into how also the artists were active during that time. Sana maayos na yung connection niya. But having said that, I feel I have to give context kung paano pa talaga nag-transition into people power because it wasn't as much as Ramos and Enrile were pivotal, they were only the last domino to fall to make that happen. And the best analogy that I can make right now is February 86 feels a lot like February 2022. Why am I saying that? February, there was a lot of disenchantment and a lot of complaints about the Marcos government. Like there is widespread disenchantment with the government right now, especially with the pandemic response, and especially with the issue of EJK, etc. So parang may similarity na ganon. Yung disenchantment ng mga tao, restlessness, feeling that the government is all-powerful, and frustration na walang magagawa. But we were also in the middle of an election. It was snap elections, and it was the first week of February. And leading up to it all, tumakbo si Cory against Marcos. And a lot of people say that the movement around Lenny reminds them about the movement behind Cory at the time. So the euphoria was certainly there. The difference is that leading up to and after the Feb 86 snap elections, there was massive cheating, ballot box snatching, the assassination of Evelio Javier in Antique, the beating up of NAMFREL volunteers all over the country. Tapos, during the counting of the ballots in the Feb 86 elections, may nag-walk out pa na COMELEC tabulators. And it echoes a lot of what some people are feeling right now na I'm not saying this is true, but some people are feeling na may lack of objectivity ang COMELEC. So, to be alive at that time had many parallelisms to how it feels right now. I'm not saying there should be a revolution, but I'm laying that down right now para makarelate kayo sa feelings of frustration. So, with that said, I was active with Father James B. Reuter's theater group. I was a young actor. And Father Reuter also had an alternative news gathering organization called the Philippine Federation of Catholic Broadcasters. He had organized this with Cardinal Sin, and these were the Catholic stations all over the country. And because the press could not be trusted to be objective, he activated a network of young reporters, volunteers, to help gather all these reports from NAMFREL, the count of NAMFREL, and broadcast them through that network. Who were these volunteers? These were the kids, teenagers, young adults, students who were the actors of Father Reuter, because Father Reuter was a Jesuit who specialized in doing religious plays for different groups. Doon ako napasok because I was one of his actors, and they had put myself and my brother in a team with June Keithley, who would eventually become the voice of the revolution, as a team. And June Keithley was at first the one announcing these reports through Radio Veritas. But in the first day of the EDSA revolution, Radio Veritas was bombed and attacked by Marcos troops, so they stopped broadcasting. And then Father Reuter, and then Ramos and Enrile. Enrile was close to Father Reuter. His wife was close to Father Reuter. Called Cardinal Sin and said, we need another radio station to help gather the people to move around us. And because of that, naghanap kami ng radio station. At that time, the military controlled what is now DZRJ in Santa Mesa, and we set up broadcasting there. The first, practically the second day of the revolution up to the third day, directing people where to go um, to mass together. Kasi wala pang ano eh, hindi pa marami ang tao nun. And we broadcasted maybe 12 hours or so. And then after us na take over na yung Channel 9 and PTV4. So it was a very short-lived moment. And it might be good to hear from Jay Fajardo, who's probably on the streets, hearing June Keithley at that time. My job and my brother's job, together with a few other volunteers, was to take these reports from our network, bring them to Jude Keithley, and she would broadcast them.
Thank you, Gabe. I cannot. I am lost for words. That's a very. I, well, first thing I'll say is thank you for doing that. And given at your age, I can't imagine what I was doing at 13. No, not maybe nothing as meaningful as that. So Jay, what were you hearing on the radio?
A lot. You have to remember, JP, hindi pa kami botante ni, ano, no, no, ni Gabe. I was only 17. I was 1 month shy of being a voter because my birthday was March. So we were really, just kids. Pero I really want to go into that because the media, particularly what Sina June Keithley and Sina Gabe did during that time, they really played a big role for a lot of us. But just to backtrack a bit in the story of People Power, just to maybe add more support to how it evolved. My own view is that People Power started during the manifesting itself during the funeral march of Ninoy Aquino. Um, because that was an unprecedented display of mass movement. Um, and that the reason I point to that as one of the catalysts is because that display of large amounts of people gathering around a movement, a cause, and a person was stunned everybody, and I'm pretty sure stunned the government, stunned Marcos, which I think was I call it the start of the end because they sort of not only did the dictatorship start to realize certain vulnerabilities in what used to be their um, quote unquote stranglehold on society. But the rest of society also saw that. So a particular courage, yung sinasabi nila na yun na pag tumindig ka, may titindig sa tabi mo. Ganon ang feeling noon. Kasi display of uh, ilan yun? 2 million people. Imagine that. When you see 2 million people that went to the streets and you can relate to them, lalakas rin ang loob mo. So it becomes an exponential um, spread of sentiment, of courage, etc. Now, what compounded that further during those years between 1983 and 1986 was the rise of the dissident media, and you could see that with not only with specific media outfits, Inquirer, sina Star, yan si Mr. and Miss, the unlikely unlikely source of dissidents in media. Um, but even personalities medyo umaalma kasi it was something different for us. Whereas before, all you could see on TV and the news were propagandists. Yan, particularly people like sina Ronnie Nathaniels, nakakainis yan when you started listening because they were really gushing. Gabe's right. When they spoke about the administration, Marcos, Imelda, etc., they would gush, and it was disgusting to
Parang
watch.
parang SMNI. That's what SMNI during
It
the
was
debate
it was
reminded me of.
ridiculous.
Ganon.
It was ridiculous. It was nakakainit ng ulo. Ngayon, when we started seeing these people, media personalities start speaking in language that was no longer propaganda. They were actually criticizing. They were asking hard questions. They were standing up in full view of the public. People like us, we're starting to use that as our source of courage. Wow, imagine that. So we kept on, it was sort of addicting na rin eh, kasi we wanted to watch the news, we wanted to hear these people speak and um,
Parang
and reinforce our
gusto kong isingit, Jay,
yeah,
while you're on that point. June Keithley at this time was a children's show
yeah.
host
That's right.
on the government station, and she had bless you and I love you, Tita June. As you hear me, she had a really annoying voice at that time. And talagang if you allow me to say it, parang she was really a frou-frou, seen as a frou-frou colegiala girl. And I say this,
Burgis.
burgis.
Burgis
Parang
yan. Upper
the
middle
cap,
class.
yes. You know, the closest analog I might come to compare her to is parang Ann Curtis ang dating niya, pero children's show host. That's how she was seen back then, that mababaw. So yung sinasabi ni Jay na when you see people suddenly speaking up, it's as jarring as seeing Ann Curtis make a political stand.
Yeah. Okay. So yun. So going now to yan, sige, yun yung evolution ng dissident media around that time. Um, and so People Power happened. Ginawa ni na lumabas yung Radyo Veritas. It was shut down. Radyo Veritas was actually one of those outfits that we were listening to. Tapos the hype, yun nga, yung when they set up the pirate radio, Radyo Bandido, we everybody in the on the streets, in their homes, were really relying on these outlets to provide courage, more courage. Pampalakas ng loob yun eh. Every time man madidinig mo, they're still on the air, they're still on the air. Are they still on the air? Yun yung mga those were the things. Those were actual fears for us, ha? What happens if Radyo Bandido gets shut down, etc., etc. So yun yung mga hinuhugutan namin ng lakas ng loob. Of course, not just the act, but the information as well, because they were also providing us with intel. Eh. So yung mga kung saan yung mga tangke, sino yung mga nag-defect na when they started announcing one by one all these generals that were starting to defect, when suddenly the choppers that were supposed to attack Camp Aguinaldo, si General Sotelo yata yun eh. Kaibigan ko rin yung anak
Yes,
niya eh.
correct. Correct.
So they went to Camp Aguinaldo, there were a bunch of Hueys, and then suddenly they landed, and then they got out and they defected. So yung mga those small wins were very very inspiring and critical. And we got that all from media. Kami nasa when I went to EDSA, I wasn't just in EDSA, I was also in White Plains, Santolan, Katipunan, Santolan. Kasi the barricades were set up around the perimeter of the camps. And we were trying to block the movement of the military from entering passageways towards Camp Kramen, Camp Aguinaldo. So nakaharang kami dun sa Santolan ng Katipunan. So puro radio announcements, puro transistor radios, lahat ng bit-bit namin nun to get news. And yeah, yun yung that was they played a big role. Yan sina Gabe and the rest of the media.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I can imagine, no, yung atmosphere or how it looked like when the choppers landed and the general stepped out. Um, oh, sorry, hindi ko alam kung, can you guys hear me? Okay, I'll
Yap,
continue.
yap, yap. Medyo choppy ka lang.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So we have some good news. So we managed to we found a way to route Mr. Joey Ayala. So yung isang speaker si HB Alcacin, he's patched in Mr. Joey Ayala. So let's give some time for Joey to share his side, his input on the martial law side and the lead up to people power, as Gabe mentioned.
Welcome, Manong Joey.
Hi, how are you? JP. So I have Mr. Joey Ayala via Skype. I don't know if the voice is good, but and our mic's good, but let us try this and hopefully it works. Mr. Joey Ayala, can you talk right now and we'll just test if this works?
Magandang gabi po, Tess. Magandang gabi po.
JP, how is it?
Perfect.
Hello,
Okay.
hello.
Yes.
Test.
So, Mr. JP, Mr. Joey Ayala, pwede po niyo hong bigyan kami ng background about martial law and how it was in your side. And then after that, maybe you can give us a background of people power too. So we'll give you airtime to explain the two times that they already discussed. So, Mr. Joey Ayala, the mic is with you, so you can talk right now.
Ang very clear sa akin na memory, yung unang araw ng martial law. Yung tatay ko tumawag galing sa opisina. Tinawagan yung nanay ko. Sabi, hinahanap ako. Huwag daw ako lalabas ng bahay kasi mga mabambuhok kinugupitan ng pulis. Tago mo si Joey. Kasi makapalambu ko nun, Jimi Hendrix. hippie ako nun, hippie. EPKM. Ayun, yun ang maalala ko. Malapit lang sa 20th Avenue kami nakatira noon. So, yung sunod-sunod na truck ng military na dumadaan sa 20th Avenue, kita ko yun. So, nakakatakot siya. Thrilling na nakakatakot na kakaiba. Parang the world stood still. 8 months later, nag-migrate kami to Mindanao. So, for the longest, yung mga taon ng Marcia doon, doon ako sa Mindanao, Tagum, Davao del Norte, Tabindagat, at saka sa Davao City. Ang memories ko ng panahon na yun, actually masaya. Kasi sumali ako sa isang theater group na aktivista. So for me, dahil may issue, masaya. Bilang artist, I had something to say, I am relevant, I had substance. And my best songs, this is what my mom told me, yung pinakamagandang mga kanta ko, yung mga nasulat tong panahon na yun. So yun that's what I'm thankful for. Kumbaga martial law ni Marcos, for me was a blessing as an artist kasi it gave me substance. Gave me something to write about na hindi lang boy meets girl. On the negative side, active, there was a lot of violence in the city, yung urban warfare ng NPA, police, sundalo. Saka maraming mga balita galing sa outskirts ng violence, ng hamletting, mga taong pinapaalis sa kanilang tirahan para to flush out the rebels and all that. So, talaga siya. Gera siya na ginamit ko ang term gerang tahimik. Although occasionally meron pang maririnig na ratrata ng Armalite, yung putok ng 45, occasionally may granada, mayroon akong barkadang nawala at nag-surface ulit after ilang buwan, after being tortured, tapos ayaw na umalis ng Davao, yan ang bumalik na traumatized na. Madami akong kilalang mga physically nasaktan ng martial law. Meron akong kaibigan na isa lang ang mata kasi nung nag-NPA siya, nahuli siya. Coup de grace, binaril siya sa noo, dumulas yung bala, mata lang ang natanggal, hindi siya namatay. Madaming mga ganyang kwento sa Mindanao. So people power was kind of siguro dahil nakakita ako ng mga bangkay, mga kaibigan akong nawala, may professor ako, paborito kong professor, pinatay kasi commander doon ng NPA. Pag ng mga rally-rally, parang hindi ko ma-relate. Although sa Davao, nag-people power din. Poli tumaan. Uncle ko, hindi na ako sasabi ko. Hindi ako masyadong makarelate sa people power kasi parang ang layo niya doon sa barilan, sa kapatayan. Parang napaka-festive niya. Parang malayo sa katotohanan. Ganun dating sa akin. Tapos nung gabi na umalis si Marcos, nakikinig lang kami sa radyo ng buong araw. Ano nangyayari sa Maynila. Habang nagmamadyong, nakikinig kami sa radyo. Nung gabi, wala na. Umalis na daw si Marcos. Sakay kami ng sakyan. Tapos labas. Siyudad. Umikot kami. May impromptu motorcade dun sa main street. Festive ang atmosphere. At the same time, para sa akin, kind of depressing kasi alam ko naman walang milagrong mangyayari. Things should remain the same. Nandun pa rin yung mga mahirap. Wala. Pa rin. So, hindi ako masyadong nakarelate sa people power emotionally. Malayo. Distant phenomenon. Distant phenomenon.
Mr. Ayala, do you mind enlightening us about your role during this time? Ano yung ginagawa niyo?
My what?
Your role? Ano yung role niyo sa...
Ginagawa ko? Well, I was studying. I was in college.
Oh, okay.
Economics major to. Pero what really kept me in school was the theater group.
Mm.
Yun yung pinaka-emotional anchor ko dun sa eskwelahan. The school itself, the academics themselves are not all that engaging. Mas interesting yung theater group, mas interesting yung naging editor ako ng school organ, mas interesting sa akin yung extracurricular kaysa sa curricular. So,
if I may.
Nagko-compose na ako noon. Right after college, dumiretso ako ng pagiging journalist. Nagsulat ako ng features. Tapos nung linipat, naging news yung sinusulatan ko. After one news story na bloody, ayoko na maging journalist. Pina-interview ako ng survivor ng isang grenade blast. Tapos sa hospital. Pinuntahan ko yung magulang ng mga namatayan. Pinuntahan ko sa punerarya. Hindi ko matake yung iyakan. Ini-interview akong sugatan. So doon ko naisip na yung imbis na magsulat ng news, sulat na lang ang kanta. Tapos naging attitude ko noon, yung news, madaling makalimutan eh. Yung kanta, mahirap kalimutan. So I stuck to songwriting. I considered myself for a while parang a journalist in the form of songs. And I saw to it na as a songwriter, write about principles and ideas and in a manner na matranscend yung time and space. So wala akong kanta na meron ako isang kanta na ginawa na topical. Ibig sabihin, pang rally, kinanta sa rally. All the other songs, na-realize ko na, okay, gagawa ko ng kanta para sa rally. After the rally, wala na. Wala na siya.
Mr. Joey Ayala, there are two hands raising right now. One is from JP and one is from Gabe. So I think they would, let's just, JP, do you want to ask a question first? And I would relay it to Mr. Joey Ayala.
No. Let's let Gabe wait. He wanted to weigh in.
So Gabe, do you want to talk? I don't know. Mr. Joey Ayala, are you
Yes.
listening to the Twitter space? Can you hear Gabe talking right now?
Choppy yung audio niya.
Oh, choppy raw audio mo, Gabe. Pero sige lang. Whatever your question, I will just relay it.
It is more of a comment, but to support and understand Joey's role, it is best to listen to his Panganay ng Umaga album. There are 3 songs that really stand out for me sa Panganay ng Umaga. Yung isa, yung kunento ni Joey na grenade blast, I think yun yung topic ng Bangkerohan song niya. Nandyan nga. Oo. Nandyan nga yung nabanggit rin ni Joey yung hamleting and the experience of the military clearing out entire villages. That is in his song Wala Nang Tao sa Santa Filomena. And the plight of the revolutionary Aguila, Haring Ibon, which was on two levels. One about the eagle, and on the other hand about people who fight for a noble cause. So it is a good insight into Joey as an artist and what martial law was like. Panganay ng Umaga album. Tama ba, Manong?
Manong Joey Ayala, tama ba raw ho yung mga nirekomenda ni Gabe sa inyo?
Kung classroom ito, sasabihin ko, very good, Mr. Mercado. You may sit down.
Baka ho pwede natin patugtog yan on another session para marinig natin at ma-criticize natin and makritik natin ang mga songs at para malaman natin sa kung ano nangyari dun sa mga songs during the martial law. Another event po. Another event po. Si JP ho may question. JP, go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to add yung one of the songs na sinulat ni Mr. Joey Ayala, yung Dumaan Ko. And then as I was preparing for this event, actually ako really na makinig minsan I don't research enough. But anyway, I found out na yung words dun sa song came from from a Jao-born Filipino, si it was wait lang, tapin ko sa notes ko. It was Maningning Miklat's verse number 2. And I really like the words to that song. And yung connection niya sa martial law was this she's a poet and an artist. And then she moved her family moved to China to escape martial law. And I'm not sure if their family was oppressed, Ang Wikipedia lang yung source ko. Um, when her family moved back to the Philippines after the People Power Revolution. So, Mr. Joey Ayala, meron pa kayong story with your interaction with Maningming Miklat while she was alive when you were um, uh, recording this song?
Mr. Joey Ayala, did you hear the question? Did you have
I heard it, but hindi ko naintindihan. Choppy yung
So
signal.
sino-sino yung interaction, JP? Kanino siya nagka-interaction?
Okay, Maningning.
Maningming,
Yeah.
yeah.
So did you have interaction with Maningning? And can you enlighten us if you did have an interaction?
Yung lyrics na dumaan ako, inabot sa akin buo na yan. So we did not write it together. It's purely Maningning. Tapos yung first version, may word na pag kinanta, hindi maintindihan kasi bihirang gamitin. So I asked her about it. Tapos pinalitan niya. Siya na yung nag-edit para mas madaling maintindihan. And inabot sa akin yung lyrics, if I'm not mistaken, 1994 na. 94. And it was it preceded a whole series of poems which she wrote to commemorate the centennial ng Revolution ng Pilipinas, so 1996. She gave me, I think it was 15 verses, 15 poems. Hindi ko nalapatan ng music lahat, pero pinablish niya lahat sa libro niya.
Okay. May nakwento ba siya sa inyo na the reason I'm curious lang ako kung may nakwento siya sa inyo na kung bakit sila umalis ng martial law.
Kung bakit ano?
Curiously lang ho si JP kung bakit raw umalis sila during martial law.
Hindi ko alam. Hindi namin napag-usapan yan. But I believe yung tatay niya ay naging Filipino Bureau Radio Peking. I think he was one of the guys who hijacked the plane or something.
Okay. Anyway, so let's go back to the subject of people power revolution. People power revolution. So Jay, ano yung you mentioned yung may choppers, di ba? So nagland yung ano. And also thank you pala Sir Joey for sharing. We'll get back to you, no. So Jay, ano pa yung when we first spoke with you, you sabi mo you were you were there for the 4 days, and then sabi mo nga I'm trying to paint a picture of what the atmosphere like with the chopper na nagland, and then instead na barilin kayo or barilin from the air joined you. I would know how would that feel, no? Parang yung kalaban mo na hindi pala kalaban, biglang kakampi mo. What else was what was the atmosphere on the ground? Ano pa yung what was the feeling? Can you can you share us what you're feeling and what made you feel that? Was there fear, anger, or was it festive?
Actually, JP, it's a mixer. Kasi, like I mentioned, the all 4 days was not just an EDSA alone. That was in EDSA, Santolan, so paikot-ikot yan, palipat-lipat kung saan kailangan ng tao. Kasi siyempre may mga calls for barricades. Like, we need barricades in this place. So people rush there, people go there. To describe the atmosphere, it was everything that you mentioned. First and foremost, siyempre, uncertainty. Kasi this was unprecedented. First time. We don't do this every day, di ba? So, kapit busy ka sa EDSA, tapos biglang there's an announcement going on on the loudspeaker that the tanks are about to move or moving. Nandun sila nakaparada sa sa where Robinson's Galleria is now. That used to be an open lot. So the tanks are all there. They start maneuvering and moving. Everybody tenses up. That mass of people that was on EDSA, parang nagte-tense up lahat yan, sabay-sabay. So, kapit-bisig lahat yan. Syempre, fear. No? Obviously, kasi you know that there's a column of armored vehicles that's about to roll straight to you. No? Pero ikaw, your people expect you to just stand your ground. Fear. Okay, so in that instance, it's being afraid, it's being uncertain, etc. Tapos, pupunta ka na yun dun sa, naalala ko yun, nasa Santolan kami, gabi yun eh. So, festive yan. Kasi, nakaupo ka lang doon, wala naman masyadong activity yung movement, yung army. They were down in the Libis area. And then, we were up there in Katipunan. So, until they moved, we were just there, sitting down, sleeping, lying down. May mga nagigitara. Kung kilala mo yung Bad Banana, sina Jay Ilagan, Johnny Delgado, this is a bunch of actors that were, barkada yan, na comedy. They were there with us. Nagiinuman ng beer. So, pag ganon, festive siya. So, until biglang magkaroon ng tawag dito, ng sudden alert na, oy, akit yung mga yung army. They're gonna make a move. So, biglang babangon ka na yun. Kung natutulog ka, babangon ka, tayo ka. Kapit-bisig na naman. So, yung term na kapit-bisig, that was very common. That was a call to hold your ground, stand your ground. Tapos, yung mga news ng mga defections na unti-unti, yun yung inantay mo eh. Kasi, just to talk to, when Pat was mentioning how the military man felt his father, his grandfather, etc. I could relate because I come from a military family. My dad, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all military. So, professionalism ng military man was something I understood, but what should be also noted was that we were looking towards them every time they made a move. Our hope was with them, with the military. Kasi sila yung turning point eh. Pag nag-defect ka na, unti-unti, parami ang pupunta dun sa Aguinaldo, sa side ni na Ramos, sila Enrile. Tumataas na yun yung hope mo, yung confidence level. So yun yung those were the different tawag dito, things that we experienced. Like sabi mo nga, JP, fear, festiveness,
Camaraderie.
Camaraderie, yes. But yung hope nga, yung boost ng moral pag nakakadinig ka ng news item na biglang, pati yung Amerika, yung news from the States, like the United States calls on President Marcos to do this, do that. So those things were very important for us. Camaraderie kasi you were with complete strangers in the barricade. So
I want to ask you something. Sabi mo may nagdala ng beers. One thing I want to ask is, ano yung mga hindi mo nakita in a typical protest? Kaya ano yung mga nakita mo na yun nga, may beers. So did you ever have to worry about food? Kaya mo magpaon ng pagkain? What did you do to prepare for the protest? Did you see any weapons or And how was the attitude of the people? Parang may bullying ba doon? Or may kantsawan? Or was there a
Wala.
counter protest?
Wala. We didn't see that. I didn't see any of that counter protest or anything like that. No, kasi end of the day, kalaban lang namin doon at that point in time was the military. Um, what did we have to prepare for? Tear gas. Um, Kasi I remember na tear gas sila dun sa sa Santolan. Wala ako noon kasi I went home. My brother was there. He was in the barricade in Katipunan. I went home and then he followed me and he said na tear gas sila. So yun yung nag-move na yung military papasok ng Aguinaldo. Turns out they were also defecting. That was just a show of parang that was a zarzuela. They attacked, they set tear gas, they dispersed the crowd. When they got to Aguinaldo, they defected. So I remember one scene sa White Plains Avenue kasi I was walking down White Plains Avenue. May 6x6 na gustong pumasok ng EDSA. Nandun sila sa White Plains Avenue. There were a bunch of siguro mga dalawa, tatlo or apat na 6x6. Punong-puno ng I guess they were Marines, no? Pero yung itsura nila, ang itim tapos pula yung mga mata. So, and when they were looking at us, it seemed like they were on the edge nga. Sabi nga pinag-usapan namin ni na Joey last time in our last call. It seemed like they were on the edge. Because they were very wary of us. Me, a 17-year-old kid walking down the road, when they'd look at you, they were really looking for signs of aggression on our part. No? Talagang they were on the edge. Puputok yun pag any sudden movements. No? So that's one thing I remember. Tapos, dami. There's so much There's so much activity during those 4 days. All the way to the announcement that Marcos left. When they announced that Marcos left, I can't remember. I think I was at home. I was at home, and then we got news. I can't even remember if somebody called us up or heard it on the radio. Pero yun nga, katulad ng ginawa ni Joey, nung lumabas na yung announcement, labas na lahat ng tao ulit. Tapos yan, everybody's driving around, honking their horns. That was the experience. Mas maraming drama nung leading up to Feb, to People Power. Mas maraming drama nung election.
Sige. Let's we'll get back to that reflections yung before right before, because you mentioned your involvement with NAMPA. I want to give Pat a chance to weigh in, and he also shared with us a photo of his lolo na patch na sinusot nila was to signify that you are part of the resistance. So as our facilitator is uploading the photo, in the meantime, Pat, can you tell us more about the patch and anything else you might have picked up from your lolo?
Yeah. So, yan, hopefully makita nung mga listeners yung patch. But I remember it was a patch of a Philippine flag. But yung and they use that as in order to identify whether you were still part of the government or you were part of the resistance. And I think one differentiating element dun sa patch na yun, sa Philippine flag, is yung baybayin na yung letter K or parang mukha siyang letter I na nandun siya sa gitna nung araw. And I think that was how they differentiated themselves. And nakwento ko sa yung pre-prod meeting na I don't know how they got away with it. Kasi parang obvious naman yun siguro. I don't know how they did it, but yun nga, yun yung kwento nila lolo, yun yung kwento ng nanay ko sa akin. Na that was how yung element na distinguishing factor. And I was gonna say kasi yun nga, what I mentioned before, knowing Lolo, former President Ramos, he was he's a very calculating person. And siguro just to also contextualize yung why it probably took him so long to ano yun, parang to go against Marcos. I think he wasn't just thinking about, or parang he knew na, and like what Jay mentioned already, that the military was kind of like the tipping point. It was the force that the people needed in order to succeed the revolution. And I think in a way, si Lolo knew that but he also considered the cost of if he mobilized the military. And I think that's why he was also waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity to announce all of these things. Kasi yun, naisip ko na parang if I were in his place, if I announced it too early, edi yung parang it's your one shot And with that, wala na. Parang it'll take a while again before before we there's an opportunity to topple the Marcoses. At the same time, the amount of lives that are gonna be shed just because there was a wrong decision to make, or just because he made the wrong decision, he made the wrong timing So I think those things were also being considered. He was already considering And inisip ko nga rin na kasi he used to be head of intelligence sa AFP or sa PC. And I think knowing him, he was also trying to be the inside person and yun nga, na mentioning na he was yung military. Para he was trying to get as much info as he could before making his own move. And also, siguro lastly, like if I could share nga, na kasi kahit yung sister niya, the late Senator Leticia Ramos-Shahani, she actually defected earlier. And I remember the stories from the family na they would constantly talk to Lolo and say na, hey, you know what, parang it's time. Like, why aren't you defecting yet? And even yung dad nila, si late Ambassador Narciso Ramos, even had, they were sending letters to Marcos saying na, it's time, like, you have to step down. So I think even within our family, na they also recognize na, we need to do something. We need to step up. We need to call out Marcos. And they also recognize yung power and I guess like the responsibility Lolo had. But again, na it wasn't an easy decision to make, at least for him. Na kasi lots of lives were under him and lots of lives were at stake if he made the wrong decision. Yan.
Yan. Okay, great. Thank you, Pat. So, just a reminder, we'll be opening up the floor later for those that joined us here on the Twitter space. Um, we just want to go through the reflections. One last takeaway before we'll take a break. After Gabe leaves a quick takeaway, and then we'll quickly discuss yung reflections on people power.
Hey
Gabe,
JP,
please.
can I just quickly add lang from what Pat
Yeah,
said?
sure.
Quickly lang.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Okay.
it has to be also noted that around that time there was already the RAM movement. It's called the Reform the Armed Forces movement. So meron ng meron ng grumblings within the military organization. That's where sort of like this enchanted with what was going on. So kasama yun sa storya, sa context. Kasama si Ramos doon, sa RAM.
Sorry,
Right.
if I may add, naalala ko what's his name? Si Honasan din was also part of that. And, well, of course, Enrile were part of the RAM movement. Yeah.
Yeah. How about Gabe? You wanna say something before we take a break and then reflect on people power, martial law?
Oh, I'm okay. Okay.
All right. Okay. So stay tuned, everyone. We'll move on and we'll kaya nga sabi, di ba, mag-move on na tayo. um, and we'll reflect on people power. Was it a success? Are we still in it? Um, and bakit parang nagkakaganito tayo? Why are we descending back into authoritarianism and everything else? So we'll be back in a minute. We'll just take a quick break to let everyone to take a breather and gather your thoughts. We'll be opening the floor later for other speakers, so please stay tuned.
Welcome to the Twitter space of Makati House. Our mission is to help Filipinos help other Filipinos. Our topic tonight is commemorating the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, discussing martial law in the 1970s, and reflecting on what the spirit of people power is. We're joined by former actor, reporter of Radio Bandido, Gabe Mercado, martial law baby, Jay Fajardo, author-performer, Joey Ayala, and grandson of former President Fidel V. Ramos, Patrick Ramos Jalasco. A reminder, our space is recorded and being streamed live to Facebook, YouTube, and Clubhouse. Once again, welcome to Makati House.
And we're back. So so moving on, I've prepared some questions and maybe some notes of myself from my notes about people power as a movement, as a way of protesting, as a non-peaceful, sorry, as a peaceful non-violent civil resistance. Um, and I want to go through the speakers very briefly on what they think about people power. Like I know see Mr. Joey Ayala has some comments on that. Maybe we can uh, uh, get some insights from Mr. Joey Ayala. Uh, he already expressed he was not a fan of people power, tama ba? So maybe he can expand on that briefly, siguro mga 2 minutes, so we can open up the stage. Um, HB, are you there? Do we still
Yeah,
have
I'm here.
Mr.
I am
Joey
here.
Ayala? Yeah.
Mr. Joey Ayala. So
Yep, yep.
I don't know if you heard the question of JP. The question is, can you convey your insights to us regarding people power?
Uh, una-una yung paggamit ng term ng martial law. Misleading yan kasi there might come a time that we will need martial law. Tapos yung gut reaction ng tao, masama siya. I just like to remind the listeners that martial law is a legal mechanism of government to protect people. So martial law has been used in wartime. There are legitimate uses of martial law. So it is one of the successes of the anti-Marcos movement that we have come to associate martial law with negativity without thinking. Malalaman mo talaga pag epekto na ng propaganda pag hindi na nag-iisip automatic. Yan. Kaya ako laging may misgiving pag slogan, etc. Because instead na paisipin mo ang tao at maging malinaw ang issue, lalong lumalabo. So, yun lang ang realization ko sa political movement, protest. propaganda on both sides. No? Tapos may third parties pa na hindi natin nakikita. CIA, China, Russia. Kumikilos yan. Japan. Kumikilos yan. Di lang natin alam. Kasi ang kumikilos dyan, yung intelligence nila. Kinwentuhan nga ako minsan ng isang secret agent na academic. Actually, hindi sila James Bond eh. Mga professor ito eh, mga scientists, mga professor. Na-estimate na nila yung lifespan ni Ferdinand Marcos by analyzing hospital waste and his pictures in the newspaper. Na-estimate na nila yung lifespan, tapos meron na silang senaryo, anong economics, anong gagawin natin sa negosyo pag namatay siya. Meron na silang mga scenarios. These are the fine point na hindi natin nakikita at hindi naiisip dahil black and white lang yung tinitignan natin. Mabuti, masama, ibagsak, Marcos, Hitler, diktador, tuta. Wala nang iniisip. Dangerous talaga siya. You know? It's dangerous. And as an artist, I want to warn you that is one of the dangers of art. Anything that is well said, anything that is catchy, is automatically construed to be true. Yan ang ligalig ng magaling sa propaganda, magaling sa art. Akala mo totoo kasi maganda ang pagkasabi eh. Like, pinaka-successful na slogan yung Marcos, Hitler, diktador, tuta, di ba? So ngayon, pag bongbong, Hitler A equals B equals C, which is insane. Because he is not his father. Di ba? So may pagkabobo. Nabobobo tayo sa propaganda. Yan ang isang danger na pinapasok natin when we discuss without really knowing ano pa bang nakatago dyan? Ano bang ginawa ng mga Amerikano? Anong ginawa ng China? Anong ginawa ng Hapon? Ano yung mga interest nila? Bakit sa Mindanao, World War II was ongoing? Bakit nagkukonsyaba na yung Pano at Hapon? Hindi natin napapasok sa equation yung mga ganong klaseng detalye. So we get caught up in the cartoon two-dimensional issues. Nabubulag tayo sa sarili nating realidad. Yung people power, panahon ni Cory, madami pa ring violence. In fact, it was one of my biggest disappointments because I had this romantic notion na kapag babae ang presidente o leader, wala nang violence. But she, quote-unquote, unsheathed the sword of war at the PMA anniversary, yung unang taon niya. Tapos, sa countryside, mas madami pa nga yatang nagpataya nung panahon ni Cory. Hindi lang alam ng mga taga Manila kasi puro outskirts. Hindi binabalita kasi darling si Cory. And then I asked my uncle why he discontinued his being the Mindanao consultant after Cory, si Ramos na. Andiyan pa ba yung apo ni Ramos?
Andito pa ho.
Nakakatawa yung sinabi ng uncle ko eh. Ayoko na kasi takot ako dyan kay Ramos. Bakit ka takot? Sa lahat ng kampo, may tao yan. Yan ang nakakatakot sa kanya. You never know what he knows and he knows everything. So ayaw na niyang maging advisor dahil takot ka kay lolo mo.
Tumatawa nga ho si Pat. Mr. Joey Ayala, si JP ho has a question. I'll let JP talk right now.
Yes.
JP.
So, quickly lang, Sir Joey. Just to clarify, you think the revolution was not successful? Or are we still in the process of the revolution?
So let me repeat the question again, Mr. Joey Ayala. Do you think the People Power Revolution did not achieve its results, was not successful. The People Power Revolution was not successful.
That question is another example of oversimplification, because there are successes and there are failures. The success and failure coexist. Nothing is totally successful and nothing is totally a failure.
So you don't
Was there an objective? Was there an objective in the first place? You cannot succeed if you have no objective.
So do you think there was an objective for the People Power Revolution?
I don't know. I wasn't a planner. I wasn't. Yun nga eh. I did not feel connected to it. I felt that it was staged.
Okay.
But that's just me looking at Manila from Davao. Malayo kasi ang Davao eh. Saka yung realidad doon, kapit-bisig, mababaril ka diretso kasi malayo ka sa sentro. Mas madali kang mawala. Manila, madaming mga camera, madaming nakatutok na news. Manila is protected by media.
So do you think that you
were... Lalo na ngayon na may cellphone na, kahit walang dyaryo, kahit walang TV na mainstream, everybody has press freedom. So I don't know. I think it's a lot safer now.
Did you feel
to be an activist?
Do you feel that you were disconnected due to the distance of Davao from Manila?
Mas madaling mawala ang tao pag wala sa sentro eh.
So disconnected talaga ho kayo sa ano nangyayari sa Manila during
ako personally, ako.
Okay.
I never really felt yung sinabi kong the emotional weight of people power. I don't have it as the way yung mga taga rito. Kasi nandito kayo eh. Siyempre, iba yung effect sa inyo. Iba yung effect sa atin. Like, nakakita na ba kayo ng sabugang ulo na pulis? Hindi pa siguro. Ako, nakakita na ako. Ayun, Sparrow unit ang tumira nun. It's that violence coming from the other extreme of the spectrum. Natutukan na ba kayo ng 45 na may hawak, lasing na secret agent? Hindi pa siguro. Pero yun na experience ko. But I cannot relate to the topic bisig the same way that you can relate to it. Kasi iba eh. Iba talaga yung reality.
So the effects of martial law and people power was different in the center, which is Manila, and also different from the decentralized, such as the provinces. So that's what...
Palagay ko ganun. Oo. Tapos para sa mga nasa labas na naipit sa barilan ng kaliwa at kanan, ang kontrabida yung uniforme. Regardless kung uniforme ba yan ng pare-pareho lang ang itsura eh.
JP, I think pinakamaganda if we can ask the Manila people during that time how the effect was, so we can have a comparison from the provincial and the center. JP? Are we still connected? Hello?
Yup, we can hear you. Si JP lang yung may problema sa audio.
Okay. So, ano ko na lang. Could someone enlighten us on what was happening in Manila? Because there's two different perspectives. Mr. Joey Ayala just showed us a perspective from Davao, which is provincial. Could someone convey to us how the experience was in Manila during People Power then? With emotions, how you felt, how it was. Because sabi ni Mr. Ayala parang it was different spectrum.
Watered down.
How Manila felt and how Davao felt.
I'll start, no? Like I mentioned, yung mga kwento namin, yun talaga yung naramdaman namin sa Manila. Ang tama si Joey na iba yung weight ng emotional weight. Pag nandito ka, Aguinaldo was a stone's throw away from where we were. So we were pretty much beside what was going on. There was a lot of movement, a lot of nasa circle namin. So iba talaga. sabi nga nila, uh, tawag dito, I remember there's this guy who posted something today na people power raw was a mistake because it was a victory for the NPA, CPP NPA, which is a no, that was a misconception, because the CPP NPA had nothing to do with people power. Um, they were as stunned as the Marcos administration when it happened. So it was pretty much civil society, the groundswell of the middle class. Sabi ko nga, nag-umpisa yan nung funeral ni Ninoy Aquino. Kasi 2 million people yung pumunta sa kalsada. Yun yung ano, yun yung evolution ng quote-unquote people power dito. Outside of Metro Manila, I think that's what everybody pretty much knows this. It wasn't felt as much as it was felt here in Metro Manila. So yun yung clear difference between experiences. I don't know if Gabe can is concurs with that.
Yeah, I think I concur, but I have another way of explaining it. I relocated to Baguio about 5 years ago, and living there has really filled me with so much insight and shame of about how Manila people really think they're the shit, that they're the center of everything. I'm actually a little bit bristling na even at the terms of provincial and we're the center. Geographically, Manila is so not fucking the center. Even even government, well, even governance, that was just something that was decided. You're we, um, I say this having been born and lived 90% of my life in Manila. Most Manila people would rather die than think of relocating to another city in the Philippines. Pero game na game na, oh, I want to live in New York, whatever, whatever. So I concur na iba talaga ang experience, not necessarily because I knew what was happening in the provinces at that time, pero for the most part, Manila people tend to think that they really run the country and are the center of the country, and they say things like, Philippines, and traffic, ang pangit-pangit. That's just Manila. And I want to be, I want to be clear na I was born here. I lived 90% of my life here. Um, and it's not a slur against Manila people who were born in Manila, because I also think that a lot of the people with that mentality also weren't born in Manila either. Something happens that when people who grew up or born in the provinces, when they move to Manila, they start thinking that way too. So yes, iba yung experience. And no, it wasn't just EDSA, it's most things when it comes to running this country. Parang one last thing that I want to say. With this government that we have right now, I don't think that they brought Davao to Manila. I think what happened is they became Manileños. That's how toxic thinking Manila is the center of everything is.
Um, before I get to Pat, before I get to Pat, I just want to. I'm from New York, and I'm from the states. I think it's the same thing here in the states. They see New York, the DC, are the center of everything. So I think it's just the economic system that makes the structure like that. Um, I just want to relay that it's just not happening in the Philippines, but it's happening elsewhere
True,
in the world.
true.
So I just want to put that out. Anyway, Pat, you're raising your hand. Do you wanna relay something?
Yes. Sorry. Now that you mentioned na you're from New York, hi HB. Actually, we met when I was living there also. With
Oh,
si
Happy.
sila Gian Pangilinan and sila Paulo
Oh,
Alba.
oh, he's my
Yeah.
brother-in-law now.
Oo nga, oo
he
nga.
is
Yeah, yun.
he's my brother-in-law now. Really? Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting.
oo.
Okay.
But going back to effect of people power, I think it was successful in the sense that it toppled it toppled a dictator, it evicted Marcos, but hindi yung parang where yung shortcomings siya and its failures were its promise of being able to provide yung with the new administration na hindi lang yung mga crony ni Marcos yung makakatikim ng maunlad na buhay, kundi lahat ng Pilipino. And I think that's the main promise that was not really fulfilled ever since EDSA happened. And tama nga yung sinasabi nila Sir Joey, Sir Gabe, well, everybody else, na it's really just a Manila-centric thing. Or I think yung how this story of Manila centrism is I think yung parang it's similar to the story of spreading or not spreading or the story of inequality in the Philippines na ano nga na all of the wealth all of the progress is concentrated within just Metro Manila na yun nga Metro people in Metro Manila think they're the shit but we really aren't. And I think that's one of the main reasons why there's a resurgence of the Marcoses today. One of the main reasons. Kasi, yeah, di ba we hear, when you talk to people, supporters of sila BBM, and I guess like for middle class, sabihin na natin, mga taga Manila, people would say na, oh, bakit nyo sinusuportahan yung mga Marcoses na yan? Eh, sobrang dami nilang ninakaw, corruption, blah, 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 blah. Like to them, it doesn't make sense. But, di ba, if you talk to these people, if you talk to people who have not really parang been able to, who have been suffering for so long, to them, corruption is already something normal eh. Na, para, bakit? Eh, wala naman ano parang, so what kung corrupt sila? And I think that's the story, I guess that's the main story there na it's because I guess yun, sorry, just to add ulit, na parang that's why yung that story na EDSA is also is just Filipino elites na sila pa rin yung nakikinabang, and I think that's how um yung Dilawan became a parang negative term because it became synonymous to Filipino elites na oy ano ba yan, parang mga elitista kayo, yung madilawan kayo, na hanggang ngayon pa rin, na wala naman nagbago eh. Nagkaroon nga ng EDSA, pero marami pa rin mahirap na Pilipino. And at least like, in that sense, in that aspect, that's where people power failed. And I think that's still something that we really, really need to work on. And sorry, lastly, if I may just add, it's not just the story but it's not just the story of people living outside Manila, but it's also even like the story of Filipino women. Na kasi I could remember na 'di ba parang yung lolo ko na sure siya yung big shot, but on the other hand, he left Lola Ming to commandeer the whole house. Diba? And that's no easy task of having to take care, I think, four daughters and an elderly woman, and having to make sure that they're all safe in like time of probably civil unrest. Diba? Like those stories na we have yet to actually put in the limelight. I think that's also important. Yan.
Yeah, ako, the way I'd like to understand this, and I think this analogy first came up when I was talking to my friend Gang. Um, I think EDSA 1986, to make the analogy, was a good wedding. Bongga siya. Napatalsik si Marcos. And then we were able to get a new constitution and get Cory in, who would leave after her term of office. So it's like the comparison is it's a couple who had a nice wedding. It was beautiful, it was romantic. However, um, the feeling that it fell short, etc., and it did not live up to its promises, I don't think had anything to do with EDSA. It's what people did after. So, kumbaga, you had a nice wedding, but did you work on your marriage? We had a bad political marriage after EDSA, but the wedding was what it was. Okay naman siya. Pero if you're a married couple and you just keep watching um, your wedding video and not working on the everyday issues that you might have with your partner, then you're in deep shit. So parang um, if you judge EDSA as an instrument of ending a dictatorship and achieving regime change, then it's a success. But whether restoring, civic consciousness, social justice, all of that, it falls short. So with that analysis, I'm sort of comfortable na it was what it was. Let's not romanticize that it was world changing. But let's also hold ourselves accountable for people of my generation, for not serving the country better as civil servants, etc. Maraming ibang causes kung bakit ganito tayo ngayon.
JP, so I've been talking to Mr. Ayala sa background, and we'll have another event na papatugtugin natin yung mga songs niya, and he'll give us a backstory of the songs. So everyone is invited. We're gonna host it for another event. Mi- Miss Angel, can you unmute?
Okay, I think she's having
Hello.
issues. Oh, okay, ayan na. Okay, go. We can't
Wala
hear
po
you
yung
again.
sagot ko. Hello po.
Yes, go ahead. Okay. Sige, I think she's having issues. So, see, Pat also shared some pictures, no? While people are want to share some of their opinions. Uh, see, Pat was also protested against the burial of FM sa libingan ng mga bayan. Do you wanna expound on that, Pat? And may pictures din siya to prove it. He had I'll let Pat share the story.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, I think yung sa pictures na 'to, so I was part of yun, I was nung biglang news na ililibing pala si Marcos sa libingan ng mga bayani. I was part of the protest. I joined the protest, and I remember nga na I was in the office at that time. One of my good friends from my college activism days texted me na, "Uy Pat, may ginagawa ka ba ngayon? Kasi we got wind, we got news na ililibing na si Marcos sa libingan ng mga bayani, and we need people to uh, be there as soon as possible. Parang be our eyes and ears on the ground." So sabi ko, sige, Gabe. And I think I left mga around lunch time. Tapos alala ko, sabi ko dun sa guard ng office namin noon, magla-lunch lang ako. And I never went, siguro I went back mga gabi na. But siguro, yun nga, I don't know if the pictures are up but uh, I was part of that. I actually don't know which pictures are being shared right now. Ayun. So, ito rin, this is also like during those like few days, I was walking around, like I was just really angry and really frustrated. And this was also the same time na, yan, parang fresh pa yung pagkapanalo ni Duterte noon. So, it's like, grabe, sunod-sunod na, ano, sunod-sunod na unspeakable events happening. And this is, I guess, one of my ways of, you know, showing na we're not happy with what's happening. So, eto, yun. I see the picture now, yung Marcos is not a hero. I remember walking around after work with that signage just to, really say my piece. And in relation to siguro na that I think itatanong din naman to ni JP na ano bang what's the relevance of celebrating or remembering people power. And lalo na a lot of people are saying na, oh, di ba pwede mag-move on na lang? And di ba, that's what, I guess like yung historical revisionism and even sila BBM, are saying na, we just need, reklamo kayo na reklamo. What we need is a unified Philippines to progress. And my response to that is that it's something similar to a bad breakup na you can't just move on eh. Yeah, or parang people who want to move on are those who usually, sila yung nakasakit. And they usually tell sa nasaktan, mag-move on na lang kayo. And we all know, I'm sure everyone who's been in a relationship, di ba parang hindi ka makaka-move on eh kasi sobrang sakit eh. But kailangan mo rin ng yung closure eh. Yun yung kailangan mo in order to move on. And I think for our purposes, the closure here is that siguro, sure, like sila Bongbong Marcos na they're not the father. Yung kung ano man yung ginawa ni Marcos Sr., siya na yun. But I think it's also crucial for them to acknowledge na it also happened na their dad committed these atrocities just as I think ako rin na parang I do admit that my grandfather was part of the PC and I'm sure he has yung parang there's still that command responsibility. But also again like what I've tried to share within this session, it at least for former President Ramos's and like my family's context, na it's not just black and white. It's a very gray area, and at least ako personally, I can vouch that ultimately my grandfather's parang he always had the best interest in his heart, lalo na for the Filipino people. And I think you could just look at, or at siguro, I'd like to think that I'm one of those proofs na ultimately my grandfather had the best intentions for the Filipinos. Kasi like I wouldn't have been able to do all of these things. I wouldn't have been able to kind of participate in these rallies, know more about these things if, parang if indeed he was just ultimately complicit to what Marcos wants. Yeah.
Okay. Sige, thanks, Pat. I suggest na since we're really over time, let's spend the last 14 minutes. Let's give it to 5 minutes each again for Gabe J and Mr. Joy Ayala, and then uh, uh, we can end this space. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying for the overtime. By the way, Gabe, are you still there? All right. Uh, how about Jay?
What's his final thoughts?
Yes, final thoughts. So,
5 minutes.
and this, kasi parang ano eh, baka masyadong matagal na, it might be too late for everyone.
May wala problema. Yeah, well, I just wanted to revisit nga yung sinabi nga ni Pat na yung turmoil or na sa utak ng grandfather niya, which is totally understandable. Trying to be as professional as possible as a soldier, at the same time wrangling with personal bond and not just that, but also loyalty to the commander in chief, etc., etc. Ang dami, maraming. I'm pretty sure he struggled until he finally made this decision. Pati yung So I totally respect that, and nothing to sugarcoat. It was what it was, and I guess everybody understood that naman. Meanwhile, okay yung convo kanina regarding the why Manila experienced what it experienced with regards to people power, and how detached the rest of the country was with Manila's own, it unfortunately it started in Manila, but which actually made me think what would have happened. Would it have started elsewhere in the Philippines? Would Enrile and Ramos choose a different camp to defect? Would and if it did, would it have succeeded as well? If it was outside of Manila. So that's actually a nice thing to think about, particularly since there's this budding, emerging conversation about, or re-emerging conversation about why Manila's not all that, um, why the rest of the country isn't being I don't know, respected or seen as as equals. No? So yun yung mga conversations actually that existed before and should actually continue now. Marami akong kaibigan na na, kasama niyo si Gabe, mga umalis na. Tumira na Cebu, na sa Davao, sa other cities in the country. But that could be part of the ongoing conversation as we progress, no, from what happened in 1986. Yung mission of 1986 was pretty simple. We wanted to kick out Marcos. We wanted to kick out an overstaying president, an overstaying dictator. And that was achieved. So, reboot na lang. Nagkaroon ng bagong constitution. The government was handed back to a new set of people, custodians, and we are where we are now. So, um, I guess that could be a good cap for my own recollection and insight.
Okay, JP,
Ayun.
Mr. Ayala is here to speak his piece. So, Mr.
All right.
Ayala,
Yes.
the mic is on again with you. Um,
Okay. Okay ba ang reception? Okay ba? Malinaw?
okay naman ho. Okay naman ho.
Check. Okay, 5 minutes. I think unang-una, wala tayong analytical framework that is integrative. We do not know how, as a society, we do not know how to discuss our reality in an integral manner. We have gotten so used to the Western style education that is adversarial in nature. Kung hindi mo ako kasama, kaaway kita. Black and white. Yung ganon klaseng, kaya nga delikadong propaganda sa atin kasi wala tayong integral framework to discuss matters. Objective facts, objective systems, subjective feelings, saka subjective shared feelings. Kakaiba yan eh. And sometimes we're using the same words but talking about different areas. So walang nabubuong consensus, we just keep on looking backwards. We're no longer really looking forwards because we only talk to people we agree with. We don't want to listen to people we don't agree with. And yan yung essence ng politics, di ba? Parang, how do we have a consensus when we don't agree with each other? And the approach is always, we must defeat someone in order to achieve something. So yung evolution ng political nature natin, yung sinasabi nyo na nandito tayo, yun na nga. But we have to evolve, di ba? Kailangan natin maging aware na our nature is also our ceiling. Hanggang dyan lang tayo kung susunod lang tayo sa anong natural sa atin. So some people would say, we need to have a supernatural approach. Go beyond our instincts. We've experienced so much, and so many intelligent people are saying, wala namang nagbago eh. Maybe they're not recognizing ano yung nagbago. Like may cellphone na tayo, may internet na tayo, wala nang gusto mag-EDSA rally dahil sa traffic. Diba? Nag-iba yung iba eh. Sasabihin nung matatanda, maganda nung panahon ni Marcos. Siyempre, 50 million na ang Pilipino noon eh. Sa populasyon pala, dumoble na ang problema natin. Diba? Kasi nagbabago. Hindi lang natin napapansin yung ano yung nagbago. And then we take advantage of it. The technology allows us now to be integrative, to have organizations that are not so hierarchical. Yung horizontal organization, parang webmaster, tapos isang linya lang lahat, pantay-pantay kayo. So may element ng ano yung term na yan sa politika, element of egalitarianism. Pantay-pantay tayo lahat. Pero yung kanyang vertical aspect, hindi tayo pantay-pantay. May mga mas matalino, may mas mataba, may mas gago, di ba? May mas maliksi, may mas mayaman, may mas wais. So, dapat yung organization natin compensates for that, di ba? Kaya yung i-flatten yung organization, yung sinasabi nung kanta ng buklod na habang may tatsulok at sila ang nasa tuktok. We try to flatten that. Kasi ang tatsulok di naman nawawala eh. At saka from the perspective of kalikasan, ang nasa tuktok ng tatsulok ngayon, tao yata eh. Habang lumalago ang tao, kumukonti ang species ng ibang living things. Nako-convert natin yung energy into tao energy. Anyway, nasa tuktok din tayo ng biosphere. And we are being challenged by the virus. Anong meron sa virus na dapat natin matutunan? Mutation, di ba? Mutation. Pag napatay mo yung host mo, patay ka rin. So kailangan mag-mutate ka to a form na hindi mo napapatay ang iyong sinasakyan. Yan ang isa sa mga metaphor na pwede natin gamitin sa pag-intindi sa ating bansa. Yan ang host natin ng planeta, ang host natin yung archipelago. Paano tayo lalago na hindi natin patayan? Kasi lahat ng kayamanan nakaugat dyan sa ating inaapakan na katotohanan. Yung material reality ng dagat, ng buhangin, ng bagyo. Kaya sa palagay ko, maganda ang federalism na mas makakilos yung iba't ibang bahagi ng corporeality ng Pilipinas na hindi naman tayo nagbuo niyan, di ba? Wala namang national consciousness noon until the Spaniards parang inspired it. Amerikano pa, dagdagan pa. So yun ang tingin ko. Looking forward, I think we need to have more explicit visions of where we want to go. Kasi ang gobyerno, actually, parang ano bang role ng gobyerno? Sila ba ang dapat managinip o tayo? Yung sinabi ni Pinoy, maalala ko, kayo ang boss ko. Anong inutos natin? Kung tayo nga yung boss niya, anong inutos natin? Lahat ng tao may trabaho. Bakit? Mabuti ba yun? Lahat ng tao may trabaho. Yan ba yung gusto nating malikha? O lahat ng tao masaya? Anong malaking pagkakaiba nun, di ba? Yan lang, 5 minutes, 7 minutes na yata yun. Thank you. Maraming salamat. Mag-isip tayo. Huwag masyadong simple. Look for the fine. The nuances.
Yes.
Lubag ko yung ating pananaw. Maraming salamat po.
Agree. Thank you, thank you, Mr. Joey Ayala. So, kasi mahabang topic talaga to. Kita-kita, overtime na tayo ng uh, more than 1 hour. Um, so, we have Clubhouse and may group kami sa Makati House. Sorry, may group kami sa Clubhouse. Ang pangalan ay Makati House. And you can discuss with us more. And we'll be opening up more Twitter spaces din. So thank you everyone for joining. May dalawa na nag-request to speak. So we have approximately 1 minute. So you both have 30 seconds each, and then we'll end the space. Thank you everyone. Set natin to si JJB and si Aki number.
Hi Makati House. I hope okay lang yung audio ko.
Yes, okay.
Siguro share ko lang no, I'm only 35. I'm not yet born in 1987. Gusto ko lang ibalik yung perspektibo natin for EDSA People Power. I don't want to say that we have to look into bigger perspective regarding the EDSA People Power because the EDSA People Power should, you know, may disconnect from the people who experienced this to the people that did not experience. Ang laki ng trauma na naranasan natin with the Marcoses. Let's say the word as it is. Ang laki nung trauma na yon na kinalimutan natin at nagbuo tayo ng ibang perspektibo alam mo yon, tinago natin yung takot natin. We were not able to process it. Sige, sabihin na natin, nung panahon ni Cory Aquino right after the martial law, um, we try to all wake up kasi kamalayan buong bayan na kamalayan yung nasira, and I do not think that we have to go out and talk about bigger ideas, 'di ba? But we have to be more conscious. Ibalik natin sa consciousness ng mga Pilipino, ng mga bata, ng mga kabataan, utilizing all the social media platform that we have right now. Huwag tayong lumayo, huwag nating ibahin ng kwento, huwag nating baguhin kung ano-ano mang perspektibo ang nais natin, huwag nating gawin yon. Sabi nga, ang kasaysayan ay isa lang. Walang different, walang opinion ang kasaysayan dahil ang kasaysayan ay kasaysayan. Ginawa na yan ginawa na yan at ginagawa yan. Nire-revise ang kasaysayan sa mga kasalukuyang panahon. Huwag nating hayaan. Let's control the narrative. Sabihin natin kung ano yung totoong naganap. I was not born that time, but I learned and I studied martial law as a student. So ang ganda ng perspektibo nung ni Pat kanina, 'di ba? As a millennial, as a bata, no? Ito yung impluwensya namin. I just don't agree with other influences or with other perspective that bringing out to federalism or whatever. But I think this is the perfect time for all the youth and the non-youth to stand up and connect to the history and connect to our consciousness of what really transpire and what really happened in EDSA. You know, harapin natin to bilang mga Pilipino, harapin natin to bilang kabataan, harapin natin to na alam natin yung kasaysayan natin at yung kasaysayan na yun na hindi babaguhin ng kahit na sino man because we will control the narrative. Hahawakan natin yung sarili nating kasaysayan at hindi ito basihan para hindi natin tatanggapin na respect our comment, respect our position. No, history is history. Respect the history. And this is the history of the Filipino people. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know your name. I agree, and nandiyan yung history. Before this event, 2 weeks ago, I didn't know a lot about martial law. O, kung bakit nangyari yun, alam natin nangyari. Pero I want to find out bakit. And bakit nagalit yung mga tao. Totoo ba yung pagiging diktador. But the short message of it, if I can respond to it, is the Philippine history is still very short. And like I said, the Filipino culture, the society, still needs to evolve. We still need to grow as Filipino people. So yun lang. I'll end with that. And once again, thanks everyone for joining us.
JP,
Oh yes. Yes.
Respond lang ako. I just want to
Okay.
what Makati House stands for. What Makati House is just a platform where we try to have different opinions to 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 discuss what happened in their experiences and voice out their own opinion. That's you have your own opinion. We welcome that. Everyone in the speakers have their own opinion, and we welcome that. It's just a proper discourse, proper discussion, so that we can help each other out in the future as Filipinos and grow as a society. That's what we're trying to do here in Makati House. Um, it's just very basic intent. That's what we're trying to do. I just want to convey that no one's trying to control, that you're trying to influence. It's for you guys to think what is best for the country, your own beliefs.
I agree. Thank you, HB. I'm a proponent of free thinking and free choice. Uh, so yeah, thanks. Like I said, thanks everyone for joining and lending your time. Um, may iba pa akong notes na I'll just tweet it in my account and I'll have the Makati House account retweet it. I have other opinions on what a nonviolent protest is and how influential it is to the Philippines. And for our other content, I just added the hashtag People Power 36 for the 36th year. Um, Yun lang. If you wanna use it, use that hashtag and so we can find it, or you can tag Makati House. Um, and hopefully we'd have a nice uh, um, I hope everyone learned from this event. And next Friday is going to be a holiday. So yung may mga double pay, ma-appreciate nila yung mga lumaban. So yun, thanks everyone. Have a good night. And thank you. And we hope to see you again at our next event. By the way, ano yun? February 26th. Probably same time. Thank you everyone. Good night.
Salamat.
I sorry. By the way, you can we'll open a room in Clubhouse, so you can join us there. If you want to discuss more, join us. Look for Makati House, and we'll tweet the link sa Makati House account. Thank you. Good night. Goodbye, everyone. We're moving to Clubhouse. So, install Clubhouse, look for Makati House, and see you there. Good night. Wait, yung host. Please end the stage.
All right. Gotcha. See ya. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.